Let's talk about Hugo Lloris. He's been at Spurs since 2012, right? 145 caps for his country. He's been captain for them 121 times. He's been in 2 World Cup finals. He's won one of them. Why are we not talking about Hugo Lloris as one of the greats, apart from the fact that he flaps a lot? How does he put himself in such a position of playing for one of the big clubs, and Spurs are a big club, playing for a country who are one of the best in the world, that have won the World Cup, that could have won 2 on the bounce as well, and he's still got a rick in him? Why is that? What's wrong with his game?
He's one of them goalkeepers where he's almost felt victim a little bit to the modern goalkeeper. Now, I know some of the mistakes haven't been with his feet, but when you look at what managers now expect from their goalkeepers, you've got to be able to play from the back. That's essential. In some regards, managers will prefer you to be okay shot stopper, but exceptional with your feet.
Yeah.
Now, I go back to Bravo, who went to Manchester City, horrendous when it comes to shot
So Joe Hart went, and then they brought Bravo in. That didn't work.
Remember his debut against United? When Ibrahimovic scored.
Yes.
Awful, atrocious.
He was horrific, yeah.
So Lloris has never been great with his feet, so I'm surprised Spurs haven't replaced him up until this point, but you've got to have someone to replace him with. And I think you look at that France team in 2018, it didn't really matter who was standing in goal.
Well, it obviously didn't, because he made an awful
Rick
in the final.
Yeah, they would have won it anyway, and I think they would have got to the final with that in this time. But give respect where respect's due. A lot of caps, consistency. He's been there for France, has made some serious clangers for Spurs, and I'm sure at some stage the manager will be looking at that and thinking, all right, it's time for a change. I could even go back to the one where, do you remember when he suffered that horrific injury against Brighton?
Brighton, where he fell into the back of his neck.
Yeah, he kind of caught it, didn't catch it, palmed it down and landed on his arm. It was
broke his arm,
bit of a strange one. But
do you think it's easier for goalkeepers to be average? And by that I mean, let's take Harry Maguire for argument's sake, right? Not fancied by the manager, so doesn't play. And even when Manchester United need a centre-half, they can put a left-back in Luke Shaw. They can put another player that plays out of position in that position to fill that void. With a goalkeeper, right, you predominantly have your favourite goalkeeper, number 1, right? And then you have a number 2 that's a little bit, maybe, if your goalkeeper's meant to be a 10 out of 10, your number 2 is probably a 6 or a 7, something like that. So they're not really under the cosh at all. So if they have a bad game, they're still going to be playing next week. Is it easier to be an average goalkeeper, do you think?
I wouldn't say it's easier, but what I will say is that your form has to fall literally off a cliff for you to get dropped if you're their number 1. I go back to De Gea. He had a brief period where Dean Henderson was number 1.
Yeah.
And fair, De Gea came back after the pre-season and was, again, exceptional.
And Dean Henderson signed a big old deal as well.
Big old deal, because I'm guessing he would have thought, when I come back, I'm going to be the number 1.
Yeah.
So I think goalkeepers' form that really has to desert them before manager thinks about making a switch. But for Hugo Lloris, it does surprise me at times, because, I mean, I wouldn't say he's been poor, like for large spells, but every now and then, more consistently than it used to be, he is making clangers. More so, or the shots are going in. I'll give you a prime example. A couple of weeks ago, Aston Villa. Douglas Luiz hits a shot from about 25 yards.
Yeah.
He can see it all the way, and rather than just hold it, he kind of just like throws his chest at it, drops down. Watkins sets it back to Buendia, who scores. Things are just routine saves. Like he shouldn't be making them type of mistakes, and they cost you points.
Okay.
They're costing them points.
Well, my next question on the back of that then, right, is Spurs are one of those clubs that are desperate for silverware, desperate for a bit of success, okay? Do you think getting rid of him and bringing in, let's say they brought in Dean Henderson, you mentioned him, Emi Martinez as well, right?
World Cup winner.
If they brought someone like that in, do you think they would have more, very much like, you hit on it with Man City, right? They didn't like Joe Hart, they didn't like, what was his name?
Bravo.
Yeah, Bravo.
Yeah.
And then they brought in, of course, their wonderful goalkeeper now. Do you think that are you surprised that Spurs haven't done that? And if they did, they would have more chance of ending that wait for silverware?
Well, you want your best players out there. Like Spurs, unfortunately, are not good enough. Like they're not France, where France it doesn't really matter who's standing in goal. They can go and win the games. Well, Spurs can't do that.
You won't remember this, but Brazil in the 70s, when they won the World Cup in 1970, had an array of talent. The goalkeeper, was a guy called Felix, was an awful goalkeeper.
Listen, 2002, I couldn't even tell you who the goalkeeper was.
Oh, okay.
When they won the World Cup. So I think you get squads that are just that talented that it doesn't really matter who's in goal, that they're going to win that competition. I think with Spurs, getting a better goalkeeper will 100% help. Whether that would be someone like Emi Martinez or someone who's out there, Dean Henderson, who's a good goalkeeper, of course it's going to help, because as I said, the Aston Villa game costs you points. When your goalkeeper's not making saves, it costs you points.
Well, why don't we pay more for goalkeepers? There are exceptions to the rule. Kepa was a ridiculous amount of money. We know Alisson, of course. You could argue
worth every penny.
Yeah, him and Van Dijk, the missing pieces of that jigsaw, so I get that. We've talked about Edison as well. But it's very rare that a club will go out and spend
massive
60, 70 million pounds on a goalkeeper.
No.
Why not? Why is that?
Well, Liverpool's situation there, they had obviously Karius, who just had Mignolet, and they've had good goalkeepers. Dudek, who won Champions League, of course. Pepe Reina, good goalkeeper. But then they had, like, as you said, Mignolet came in, didn't do great. Karius, certainly that Champions League, appalling. So I get it. They identified Alisson as being the one that could take them to the next level. And yes, he's made a lot of ricks, by the way, that what have cost them goals. But there have been games where he's pulled them out the fire, where he's made save upon save upon save. So it's surprising that teams don't go, you know what, let's start with a goalkeeper. Let's go out, spend big 50 million, 60 million on a goalkeeper, and obviously let him change our fortunes.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, where do you spend that 50, 60 million? What goalkeepers are out there that you can get them for?
Let me ask you this question as well. This is something we didn't discuss in the meeting, actually, but I'm curious as to your views. Very rarely do you get a homegrown goalkeeper come through in Premier League, right? They're always bought in.
Yeah.
Why is that? When you've been at clubs, why is that kid over there who's 15, that's been with Spurs since he was 9 or 11 or whatever, why doesn't he grow up to be Tottenham's first choice goalkeeper? Why do we not see a goalkeeper at a club come through all the levels and then be their number one?
Like you do in Spain. Like Casillas, Real Madrid, got his opportunity.
Why don't we well, look, what's his name? Donnarumma was. I know he's now at PSG, but he was about 16 or 17, something ridiculous when he broke through. Why are we not seeing that?
It's quite a good question. Do you know why? Because, I mean, Jordan Pickford was one, to be fair to him. He came through at Sunderland, got into I know he spent a bit of time on loan, but went to their first team, became their number one. Everton bought him for big money.
But that's what I'm saying. Everton didn't have that homegrown goalkeeper. So they bought in Jordan Pickford. Why is that?
Oh, I think, one, the game's changing, but also I can remember, like, Scott Carson, I played with him. Like, he would get in the team of all the best goalkeepers that I played. He'd be my goalkeeper, Scott Carson, right?
Out of all the keepers you've played with?
Yeah, he would be my goalkeeper. I can remember we were at Derby, which is obviously late on, and for the first time ever, I saw a coach use a goalkeeper in a possession game. So the fundamentals of the goalkeeper back in the day was, right, the goalkeepers would go and train separately like they do now, but it would be like shot stopping, crosses, a little bit of passing with their feet, but not much, just the basics. But mainly it was the fundamentals of goalkeeping, catching, making saves. It was Paul Clements, who'd obviously been with Ancelotti at Real Madrid, PSG, these places.
But I think Bayern Munich as well.
Bayern Munich as well.
Yeah.
He came in and went, right, possession, pre-season, he went possession, goalkeepers, come in, you're getting involved in the possession. And that was the first time I suddenly thought, oh, maybe the role of goalkeepers is now changing. And maybe that's the foreign input, but you're right. Maybe we don't do enough of that. Because we've got a lot of foreign coaches in the Premier League, and they all want goalkeepers that can play with their feet. Because it maybe as goalkeeper coaches in this country, we don't emphasize enough on playing out from the back with their feet. That's why maybe they haven't been up until this point. But I'm sure now the next generation of goalkeeper, where you got these coaches like the Peps, the Klopps, that want to play out from the back, are going to be going to the youth team coaches and the academy, the leaders of the academy. I want my goalkeeper to play this specific way. So they're going to have to change what they do. So then now you might start seeing this new crop of goalkeeper come through.
talkSPORT Drive with Andy Goldstein. Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.